Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohammed Azib from the Market Studies Department, and I'm honored to welcome you all today to our workshop, Polypropylene in the Regional and Global Market. Before we start, we will have a safety moment with our colleague, Turki Al-Mulhim.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everybody. Inshallah, all of you are well. Today, we will share a safety moment. Here in SIDF, we value safety very highly. Therefore, I would like to share with you some procedures that we need to follow in case of an emergency, God forbid. So we are currently in CAFT Area 3, Building 3.04, the second floor. We are currently situated on the west side of the building. On this floor, we have two exits. We have you can see two arrows on the top map. You have a blue arrow, which will lead you to the nearest exit. And you have a secondary exit, which is indicated by the green arrow. The emergency number is 1999, 1999. This is a personal number for SIDF. We have employees who are dedicated to ensuring your safety. We don't have a fire alarm, a fire drill scheduled for today. So if there is a fire alarm activation, do not evacuate immediately. Wait for further instructions from the fire wardens on each floor. They will lead you to the exits. And from the exits, you can see the bottom map here. We have two assembly points. The one on the top left, this is the mosque assembly point. The one on the top right is the Wadi area assembly point. Just look for the one that has the shade, basically, because of the sun. Okay, I believe this is it. Thank you very much, and may Allah keep us safe and sound, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turki. Okay. Polypropylene is a versatile product that is used in our daily lives. It can be done in manufacturing, plastics, and automobile, and etc. This polymer plays a vital role in Saudi Arabia economic and industrial landscape. Today, we are privileged to have key experts in the industry to discuss more on the polypropylene market. First, starting with Mr. Kaushik Mitra, the Executive Director of Polyolefins of Europe, Middle East, and Asia at Chemical Market Analytics. CMA is considered among top consulting companies in the world and has been essential to SIDF's petrochemical projects through market advisory services and word analysis. Mr. Kaushik has more than 30 years of experience in the petrochemical industry, working in top global companies like Reliance and SABIC. Moving on to Mr. Faris Al-Zahrani, the Director of Corporate Strategy and Planning at Advanced Petrochemical Company. He has managed teams overseeing growth projects and business analysis and has been conducive in securing significant petrochemical investments and strategic partnerships. Finally, we will conclude with Mr. Samir Al-Jishi, the General Manager of Corporate Finance and Strategy at Sipchem. He has a rich experience of 30 years, with 10 of them here in SIDF as a senior consulting in the technical department. Mr. Samir is on board of Sipchem affiliates and a member in different executive committees. I would like to also highlight that SIDF has a long relationship with both Sipchem and Advanced Petrochemical Company through financing their petrochemical projects. Now, I invite Mr. Kaushik Mitra to present his insights on polypropylene outlook. Please join us.
Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry. How to go? Okay. All right. So, good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Very great to be here. And First of all, thank you to SIDF. We are incredibly privileged for the invitation to share our story about polypropylene. We are proud of our association with SIDF over the years, and we are growing from strength to strength. I will start with the polypropylene story, what's going on in the world, what can be expected. So basically, all our customers, all our associates are asking about, what's the future of polypropylene, especially because it's going through some rough time, as we know, at the present time. So we all are in business, and in business, we expect good times to be there forever. And this is, of course, a human tendency to expect that everything will be good and everything will be rosy for the future. But obviously, there are times when things doesn't really work out the way we want. I think polypropylene at this point of time is going through some very, very challenging times, obviously. It is not alone. There are several other commodities which are also going through some difficult times. And all our associates, all our clients are asking, what is the bottom of this cycle? When can we expect things to improve? And this is about my story. So I'm going to talk about those things, when the bottom of the cycle will appear, and how we can really survive this downturn. Before I jump onto the story, a very quick reminder of our company. So CMA, we are a global leader in market analytics, market research. We're part of the Dow Jones Group. Our portfolio includes Wall Street Journal, Factiva, Barron's, and others. So our clients value us, and so do we try to develop the best stories for you. With that, I will jump over to the overall dynamics in polypropylene. Now, what I'm going to do is not only look at polypropylene, but look beyond polypropylene and look at other market dynamics, market factors, which really contribute to the shape that the polypropylene markets are taking right now. Because, we are in a globalized market, interconnected market. Anything that is happening in, let's say, macroeconomic factor or supply chain factors does have some influence in the polypropylene market. So broadly speaking, these are the Fab Four, as I call it. There are different dynamics which are at play. As far as the macroeconomic factors are concerned, we know that obviously the globe is actually going through some slowdowns, especially after the pandemic. It was expected that the world will, quickly gather up and accelerate in terms of growth, in terms of development, but it has not really happened. We have seen very high inflation. We have seen that the household incomes had gone down, interest rates are very high. So consumers are actually cutting back on their discretionary expenditure. So now polypropylene is much dependent on discretionary expenditure. Like, for example, it is heavily dependent on automotives that we buy, or it is also dependent on the consumer products that we tend to buy for our everyday needs, like washing machine, refrigerators, and other things. So as the interest rates has gone up, it is obviously hitting those markets very, very much. Spending power has gone down, so consumers are facing quite a bit of uncertainty in the market, and they're cutting back on their expenditure. But I think one of the pivotal factors in the market has been the slowdown in China. Now this has been well documented. We know the reasons for the Chinese slowdown. The Chinese government is also trying to intervene with various policies, various interventions. They're trying to loosen monetary policy. They're trying to adjust the supply side. But there has not been so much intervention from the Chinese government side on the demand side. So we had seen, people who are in the industry for the last several decades, I would say, in 2008 and 9, after the financial crisis, China actually announced a big stimulus package, which actually, revived the market and build a big momentum. But this time around, I think Chinese government is somewhat hesitant to announce similar kind of very, very big ticket reform measures, but market is actually waiting for that. On the supply side, there has been huge amount of capacity growth. So even as the demand was slowing down, there has been huge capacity growth in polypropylene. Now in the past also, we have seen several cycles, because in a cyclical industry, you tend to expect that there will be capacity growth, and these come in batches. So there are periods of oversupply, there is a period of underinvestment. But this time around, what we see is that the capacity growth continues unabated. So it does not stop. It continues to go up and up. And we are at a phase where more capacities are expected in the next few years. But at the same time, we are in a cyclical industry, so obviously the demand growth will not stop. So we are expecting from CMA side, we are expecting that in next 25 years, there will be almost more than 70 million tons of demand, which will be created for polypropylene. So in the sense that if you are there in the business for the longer term, you are in a good business. But yes, of course, we are going through some challenging times at present, and this is actually forcing many companies, especially in Europe or in Asia, who are based on high cost production, to contemplate cutting back production. So they're trying, thinking of plant closure, like for example, we have already heard in Europe, there are a couple of plants which have been closed permanently. There could be possibility that in Asia also there will be some plant closure. But I will show you some numbers which will amplify the fact that despite the plant closures, the market is going to be oversupplied and there will be some challenges in the short term. Cost inflation has been very, very significant. So as you know, the oil price, which is basically, a kind of a foundation for all the cost, has been up. And obviously this has had a cascading impact on the cost factor. So even as the prices actually were going down because of the high cost, the margins were getting squeezed because in an over-competitive market, you cannot increase or pass through the cost increase. So companies are really struggling at this point of time. But as I said, that we are in a cyclical industry and this is a kind of passing phase. From a sustainability point of view also, there are some changes and this is being felt in Europe. There are a lot of policy measures, there is a lot of regulations which are coming in, and companies are actually also trying to sort of, improve their game. They're trying to comply with the regulations and they're also having their own policies. But there are some challenges, and I'm going to talk about that towards the end of my presentation. With that, I think, very, very important factor is GDP. So, GDP or income factors really drive growth in a global sense. So, in the past, the polypropylene growth was very much tied to the GDP growth. So, in the past, we had seen that if the GDP was growing, let's say at one time, the polypropylene growth was 1.3 to 1.4 times. So, significantly faster than the GDP growth. Of late, we are starting to see that there has been some changes, some disconnection, some decoupling. So in the last couple of years, we have seen the polypropylene growth has been struggling. And on top of the economic factor, there are also, of course, the factors like destocking that happened down the value chain. So everybody was contemplating because of the uncertainty in the market, there has been severe cutback in the inventory side. Now the inventory will start to rebuild as the economic factors start to improve. We'll see that the growth rate will also pick up going forward, and then it will start to plateau. In future, our projection says that the growth rate will kind of, balance around the GDP levels. So it is no longer going to grow at faster than GDP as it did in the past. And the reasons are various. So basically, first of all, the overall GDP components are also changing, as you probably know, that the GDP is becoming more and more dependent on services sectors, not which was in the past, it was more like, construction, infrastructure, those sectors are becoming a bit slower, while the services sector are becoming more and more accelerating. So as a result of that, what we are going to see is that the GDP connection is going to weaken slightly. There is also going to be changes in the efficiency factor. So polypropylene, usage as a material is becoming more and more optimized. There has been changes in the design principles. There has been change in the material sciences. There has been improvement in the catalyst technology, processing technology. So as a result of that, there will be some efficiency gain, which will require less and less of polypropylene use. And then, of course, there is a pressure from sustainability side, which is being felt in Europe as of now. But in future, we are going to see more and more pressure coming in other parts of the world as well. So these factors are going to sort of synthesize into a slower growth level for polypropylene. But at the same time, as I said, 70 to 75 million tons of demand will be generated in the next, let's say, quarter of a century, which is very, very significant in nature. Apart from that, we are also seeing in the recent past, and this is very important for players in the Middle East, is that supply chain bottlenecks have been very, very important. And this has been particularly evident after the pandemic. So we have seen supply chain dislocations happening from time to time. And this has basically distorted prices, isolated markets, like for example, European prices became very, very high. And this has been a factor, especially for players in the Middle East. And as we are in the Middle East, it is very important to note that supply chain bottlenecks are going to be a fact of life. And this will have to be factored in because almost 70 to 75% of the Middle Eastern products are exported. And this is not likely to change significantly in future. So this is a fact that has to be calculated and sort of absorbed in the overall dynamic of the running of business on a day-to-day basis. So now I will show you some of the startling features of polypropylene in terms of supply-demand dynamics and what does it really mean for the overall evolution of the markets. First, the growth. So I have plotted here the growth of key regions and key markets, which is very, very important to note. We already saw the global growth rate, which is in the bars, as you can see. What I have done is also plotted the growth of China, India, Europe, North America, and also the Middle East. I think very, very important to note that the growth phase of the product, polypropylene, follows a particular pattern in the sense that if you are looking at advanced regions like Europe, North America, their growth phase is now starting to sort of slow down. So they are becoming more and more, let's say, plateaued growth or declining growth because of the maturity of the market and also because of the slow adoption of incremental penetration of polypropylene. While other markets, the emerging and developing markets like China, has been pivotal in driving growth in the last few years. So China, actually you can see that the growth rate has been fantastic in the last few years or over last couple of decades. Now with China starting to mature, the growth rate is going to slow down. Another important factor why China is starting to slow down is basically, if you look at the composition of the Chinese growth, almost 40 to 45% of the Chinese demand was catering to the export market, be it resin export or finished products, components, semi-finished products. That was really driving the Chinese growth. And the domestic demand, if you look at statistically, it has been somewhat behind. In future, the growth is going to be more driven by the domestic consumption, while the export-led growth will be somewhat stymied, I would say. And then India subcontinent is going to pick up pace and it is going to become the, let's say, the star performance in terms of the growth rate. So as you can see from the yellow line, the growth rate is quite strong because of lower base, and India is also reforming fast. Middle class is growing, there is growth in infrastructure, investment, so that will drive the growth. In the Middle East, we have had some rough years in the last couple of years, but the growth rate is starting to stabilize and it will improve and grow in future. Middle East needs more investment, so Middle Eastern governments in GCC, they are trying to expand the downstream sector. There is also promotion of, let's say, make in Middle East and export, that sort of model. And this is going to accelerate in future. So in future, when we share our view, I'm very, very certain that the dotted line will go up slightly. When I started my career 3 decades back, one of my mentors used to say that it's very important to go key markets which drive the demand for polypropylene. And there are different, let's say, dynamics at play. So in general, those sectors which are basically dependent on consumer discretionary expenditure are very much impacted by the interest rates. So as the interest rates have gone up, there has been a negative impact in sectors like building and construction, because as we know that we are not buying our homes that much, we are not buying our automotive or cars, we are not buying our refrigerators and washing machines that frequently, and this is basically impacting the overall growth. On consumer sector side, there has also been somewhat slower growth. Industrial packaging has been slowing down because the overall industrial sector has been somewhat slow in growth, and this is tied to the GDP growth and macroeconomic profile. I think one of the key winners of this pandemic and the period after that is the medical and healthcare sector, and polypropylene is actually favored in those sectors. So we have seen very continued growth and continued momentum in these sectors, because countries and regions have realized that this is a very key sector where investments are required, not only in infrastructure, but also critical facilities and equipments. So this is basically our framework on which we have sort of made the study. And this is another sort of amplification or granular view of that. For those who are wondering why the table is empty, yeah, this is deliberate actually. So just focus on the color codes that are there at the bottom. So essentially red and gray signify slower growth rates, while blue, yellow and green are signifying the faster growth rate. So here what you see is basically different sectors where polypropylene goes, like filament sheet, injection molding, pipe extrusion, fibers, raffia, and others. And then you have the different regions. So you have on the left side, you have advanced and developed regions like Europe, North America, South America. And on the right side, you have regions which are emerging and developing. So Africa, Middle East, Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia. So very key feature of this table is basically you start to see the growth momentum is actually shifting towards more emerging and developing countries. So fastest growth is Indian subcontinent, and then also regions like Northeast Asia, which is basically a proxy for China, is also growing very, very strongly. And then of course there are others like Middle East, Africa. These regions are also accelerating and growing in the future. As far as sectors are concerned, polypropylene is quite diversified. So it goes into construction, it goes into infrastructure, it goes into consumer products, consumer durables, it goes into packaging. So there are various applications for polypropylene. It makes it somewhat counter-cyclical, but at the same time there are exposures which are also dependent on, as I said, consumer discretionary expenditure, and high interest rate definitely impacts the polypropylene market. Now, let me shift focus and start to look at what is the supply-demand balance as far as polypropylene is concerned. Let me explain this chart. The bars, which represent different colors, are representing incremental capacity growth. So the color codes are basically defined at the bottom in terms of the legend. The firm yellow line is basically the incremental demand. And the dotted line, which is aligned to the right axis, is the operating rate. How to read this chart is basically if you see the bar heights are higher than the yellow line, the firm yellow line, it means the markets are oversupplied. So if you focus on the period between 2021 and all the way to current period, you see that the markets have been very, very much oversupplied. And from the color code, I can explain that almost 70 to 75% of the capacities are coming in China. And this has been, the feature of the last few years. So almost the majority or the bulk of the capacities are coming in China. And then to make matters worse, the demand growth has been very slow in the last couple of years. 22 and 23, the demand growth has been very, very low, as you can see from the yellow line. Had the demand been at a normal level, let's say 3 or 4% level, then too the capacity growth would have been very, very significant, and we could have really, felt the, let's say, impact of the capacity growth. But the fact, because the demand actually was low, the impact of the overcapacity has been felt more severely. In the past, there has been period of capacity growth, maybe 1 year, 2 years, and then thereafter there has been sort of recalibration, there has been delays in projects, there has been cancellation of projects. But in this cycle, what is unique to this cycle is that we see that the capacity investors are continuing to invest disregarding the current downturn. So obviously, we see that the capacity growth continues, and this will probably not end till 27 or 28. So basically, the bottom of this cycle will be somewhere around 27 and 28, as it's given by the dotted line. And then thereafter, the capacity growth will start to slow down, and the market will start to pick up. Demand is definitely going to improve. So in the next few years, we are seeing that the demand growth is starting to catch up. And this will be, of course, be driven by also the restocking that will happen in the market. And on top of that, the downstream demand will also grow. So overall, by 27, 28, we'll start to see the market will start to balance out, and then the overall operating rate will improve going forward. But obviously, as you can see from the operating rate level, and also if you compare the past, in the past, the operating rate on an average used to be around 87%, but going forward to reach that level probably will take a bit longer time. So bottom line is that we are going to have a bit more of a downturn going forward, but then thereafter, situation is going to normalize and things are going to improve and the industry is going to be nursed back to health. This is basically indication of the operating rate levels, and this is because operating rate is very much correlated with let's say industry health, industry margin, profitability, and everything. This is by proxy is a determinant of the industry profitability and margins. There will be a clear bifurcation in terms of the operating rate. So as I said, the Chinese growth rate is going to be very phenomenal, very significant, but their operating rate is not going to be very high. So they are going to bottom out around 65%. So they are not going to run their plant at faster level, while other regions are going to operate at a more, let's say, optimum level. Key factor for the Middle Eastern operating rate is basically the operating rate is not going to be dipping that much as in the case of, let's say, China or the world operating rate, and this is going to sort of stabilize around 80-85% level. Now, Middle East enjoys quite a bit of cost advantage over, let's say, other regions. The cost advantage is not as significant as it is in polyethylene. So therefore, Middle Eastern operators will have certain edge over the other regions, but obviously it is not as high as polyethylene. So therefore, it is also going to be somewhat challenging for the Middle Eastern operators, but on a relative basis, they will have a better time. I think China is very significant factor. I already highlighted that. China's self-sufficiency, which is very, very critical to sort of monitor and also analyze, is very, very important component and determinant of the market balances. So China has become more or less self-sufficient in polypropylene, and they are going to increase with the investments that I showed. They are going to increase their overall self-sufficiency to a level of almost 1.3 and 1.4 times. So it is much more than what is required to be self-sufficient. However, on the operating rate levels, as I showed, that their operating rate is going to stabilize around 65%. As a result of that, by production, they're going to be almost at par with the self-sufficiency level. So I think one of the critical questions that we keep on being asked is that as China is becoming more and more self-sufficient, is it that China is going to start exporting and sort of competing with the Middle Eastern operators? It is not so, as you can see, at least not in the foreseeable future. Maybe in the medium to long term, they will start to export more as they become more and more self-sufficient. But because they are not able to run or operate their plant, at an optimum level, it is going to mean that they are going to reduce their imports gradually, and then eventually, in the, let's say, end of the decade or early next decade, they will start to assume a nominal export position as they go forward. So this is very, very important to note from an overall supply-demand point of view. From a Middle East point of view, I think this is also very important to note. Couple of things, that the demand growth has been somewhat disappointing in the last couple of years, but the demand growth is going to recover going forward. So we are going to see also restocking down the value chain, which will also kickstart the demand growth. And then thereafter, there will be a slow recovery in the overall demand process. In the GCC, we see quite a lot of investment, as I was mentioning, in the downstream sector, and this will definitely support more, let's say, sustainable demand growth. I think one of the key features for Middle East is exports. As I said, that almost 65 to 75% of the products made in Middle East is exported, and this is basically putting the Middle Eastern operators in a more, let's say, vulnerable position, as the global markets are slightly imbalanced in terms of demand. But this feature is going to continue as more capacities like Advance is starting up, and then some other capacities are being talked about around this period. So therefore, there will be more capacity and more export surplus which will be generated in the Middle East. So that means that Middle Eastern operators will have to factor in this dynamic, that they will be dependent on export markets, and also on the supply chain, and therefore this is a critical depending factor. And this is something which will have to be built in the business plan. This is on Saudi Arabia because we are in Riyadh, so I thought it's very good to note. Saudi Arabia is the fourth largest market in terms of capacity globally after China, US, India, US, and then its rank is fourth. It's a very, very significant market in terms of capacity. The capacity growth continues with more capacities coming. There are large global players who are operating in the market. They have a significant market presence everywhere. I think one of the unique features of all these players is that they are present, their products are present, their marketing activities are present all over the world, and this is getting stretched. So as more and more capacity is coming in the region and in the country, they are going to be, as I said, stretching the supply chain and becoming more and more present and visible around the world. The most latest products are being commissioned here. Latest, that's a technology, catalyst, processing technologies are coming. So this is a very, very thriving market. But also there is a fact that export dependence is high. So net export, which is given by the yellow line, yellow bar, you see that net export is starting to climb even in future. As far as the demand is concerned, the demand level is modest, as you can see, but it is a very, very diversified market. Downstream sector is becoming more and more deeper, so more and more application bases are starting up, more and more brand owners are coming, so they are setting up bases and they're requiring quite a bit of diversified product range, grades, and also applications. So very, very thriving market. As far as the overall dynamic is concerned in the market, this is very important to note that which markets are surplus and which markets are deficit. As far as polypropylene is concerned, I think the only realistic or recognizable, let's say, surplus market is Middle East. As you can see, almost 3.5 million tons of surplus overall is there in the region. And this product is getting exported all over the world. It is going to South America, it is going to Africa, it is going to Europe, it is going to Indian subcontinent, it is going to Northeast Asia. I think one important dynamic to note here is that as Northeast Asia, which is basically a proxy for China, is becoming more and more self-sufficient and, of course, possibly surplus, and as Middle East is starting to increase their surplus with more capacities coming in, they will have to look at alternate markets. So Northeast Asia is no longer going to be a home for a large chunk of the Middle Eastern products. So other markets will have to be developed, other markets will have to be accessed. So in that context, I think Indian subcontinent is emerging as a very, very interesting region where the net deficit is going to increase because Indian market is going to grow, but the capacities are not keeping pace. So therefore, Indian subcontinent will attract and require more and more imports. So producers in Saudi and also in the Middle East are well advised to develop the Indian connection and also develop the marketing presence there in that market. Other markets are more or less remaining in their sphere. There is not much of major changes. North America, which is a major force, major competitor in the polyethylene spectrum, is almost no competition for the Middle Eastern players. So therefore, there is a definite, let's say, prevalence of the Middle Eastern suppliers. Middle East suppliers are also very much present in Europe, and this has become very, very critical because, as you know, the Russian suppliers, which is presented under the CIS, the Russian suppliers have been banned after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So therefore, the European market became slightly more dependent on import, and I think Middle Eastern suppliers are starting to fill up that void. So we see more supplies from Saudi Arabia and also other parts of this region going into Europe. Now, cost and margins. From a pricing point of view, I think this is very important to note that prices are very much depressed. So we had a golden time around 21, 22 when the markets, as I said, was more or less balanced. And then there was supply chain bottlenecks, which kind of isolated the European market, North American market, which allowed those market prices to go up and inflate quite significantly. But supply chain bottlenecks are starting to normalize, and as we go forward, we'll see that prices are going to be more governed by the supply-demand dynamics and more market balances. So therefore, we see a, let's say, narrow band of price movement, and prices will be more or less range bound. The risk factor for prices is basically the crude oil prices, how the crude oil price moves, and how is it going to shape up the overall dynamic of the market. So this is very, very significant. This is very, very important in terms of noting the price direction or price dynamics. Now, I'll shift my focus and talk about recycling sustainability, because this is, I think, one of the key factors, let's say, worrying factors for some people, and also is a key opportunity for the market dynamics. There are a lot of things which are happening, especially in Europe. In that context, there are developments which is basically driving the European policies, European regulation. There has been several changes that has been happening in the European market. So broadly speaking, there are three elements, three pillars of sustainability. One is decarbonization, another is, of course, resource conservation, and the other is prevention of environmental leakage. In terms of decarbonization, obviously driven by climate change, there has been more focus on electrification, more focus on renewable energies. In Europe, there are ETS schemes are becoming more and more stringent. Companies are trying to decarbonize, and they are trying to invest more capital to achieve their plant in terms of development and also in terms of carbon footprint. At the same time, there is also carbon border tax. So European market is contemplating a sort of a carbon tax which will impose a tariff on the imports which will be coming into Europe from 2026 onwards. Of course, petrochemical is not in the first list, but it will eventually come. So basically, companies will have to pay a carbon tax depending on the differential in the carbon footprint between the two regions. So basically, if Saudi Arabia is exporting to Europe, potentially there will be a carbon tax going forward. Resource conservation is also a big topic, because obviously natural resources are sort of limited. So therefore, regions, policymakers, governments, they are trying to not only reduce the dependence, but also conserve this kind of feedstocks and raw materials and supplies. So green feedstock is becoming a bit more prevalent. So we see that there is a focus on turning more and more greener in terms of feedstock. And this is not only happening in plastics market, but also in non-plastics, in aviation, in transportation and other things. So this is going to become more and more important factors. The third factor, which is also very important, is prevention of environmental leakage. So we see that plastic is appearing in various parts of the world, in microplastics, in our body systems, in our water bodies and everywhere. And this is definitely going to be a factor which is driving the sort of focus and momentum in terms of displacing primary plastic with more secondary plastic. So basically plastic waste, and this is basically going from a linear economy to a more circular economy. So basically from a make use and waste to more, let's say, renew and reuse. And that is becoming a key feature around the world in terms of conservation of plastic. We see quite a lot of momentum in Europe. The applications are becoming more and more, let's say, circular. There are regulations, there are targets which have been given by the government. And this will drive the overall dynamic and overall development in other regions also, because they are also focusing and modeling their overall journey in terms of the European example. This is the overall growth for recycling sector. I think key area to note is on the right side, which is basically the share of recycling going forward. So as you can see that on a global sense, we are still at a modest level, about 10 and 15% is the overall penetration of recycling sector. In Europe, that is much faster. It's going closer to 20%, and then eventually it is going to go by the middle of next decade, we'll be reaching somewhere around 25%. So it is still kind of manageable. So if we are in the, let's say, primary resin sector in polypropylene, our livelihood is not really threatened by the penetration of recycling. So a lot of people keep on asking that, what about our business model? How is it going to change? Do we need to really take note of this? So if you are in the business and if you are, looking defensively at this sector, that how much of recycling is going to eventually displace you and how much of this is a kind of threat to your business model, I would say that it is still at a modest level. In future, especially in Europe, this is becoming more and more of a key sector. So you can no longer ignore the recycling sector. You have to take note. And as the European operators are starting to realize from big producer, big brand owners, big converters, they are starting to realize that this is not only a not a threat, but this is also an opportunity. So companies are evolving their business model. They are embracing the recycling sector in a big way, and they are actually going into a kind of a hybrid model. So they are maintaining their presence, their footprint in the, let's say, linear economy, so linear sector like polypropylene, but they are also investing increasingly in the recycling sector. So they are adapting the business model. They're going into mechanical recycling. They're going and exploring the chemical recycling sector. They're also changing the feedstock dynamic. They're going into, let's say, exploring more and more green feedstocks for their products. So with that, I think a very good summary of my presentation. So obviously in polypropylene markets, we are going through a very challenging times, very significant capacity growth. The bottom of the cycle is probably 27, 28. So if you are in the industry, right now, this is basically quite a tough time, but this is going to pass. So as we are in the cyclical industry, we all know that up cycles and down cycles are part of life, part of our let's say DNA, and this is going to pass. So eventually, if you are in the long term, then the market really recovers, and then it goes back to a normal level of operations, normal level of margin and profitability. And I think key number for SIDF and other stakeholders to note is that we are going to grow our demand by almost 70 to 75 million in next 25 years. That is a very significant amount of volume that will be required. And that cannot be met by the current set of suppliers. So the investments will have to continue. The capital will have to be invested. So if you are there for the long term, if you are there for the development of the industry, and if you want to participate in the good times, the best way is to position now. If you are positioning now, then obviously you are going to be ahead of the next upturn, and then obviously you are going to take advantage of that. But if you wait for the downturn to pass and then invest in the upturn, then obviously you will miss the next chance. So this is very critical to note that the industry is obviously going through some challenging times. There are plant closure opportunities, but eventually the industry is going to recover. I think one important thing to note from, I was just reading one, great saying by the legendary investor Warren Buffett, that market upsides and downsides are basically for the markets, and are also for people who are also ran, who are basically, what can be called as laggard. For the market leaders, is basically, their strategy will have to be timeless. They'll have to be, in the longer term, they will have to think, and they will have to position themselves so that they can take advantage of all these upcycles, and they have to beat the market. So there has to be strategies which are based on these fundamental features. So with that, that's the end of my story. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koshik, for your valuable insights. Now we will have Mr. Faris Al-Zahrani sharing his insight on advanced petrochemical polypropylene business. Please join us.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking from your time to see our presentation about advanced. Before I go into the presentation, I'd like to thank Mitra for the very insightful presentation about the petrochemical and particularly polypropylene business, because this has been a very dynamic in the past 3-4 years, and it has been also very important for us to stay agile, to stay lean, and to stay focused on the market. And second, thanks to SIDF for inviting us in this November month. I think it's a brilliant idea to have شهر المعرفة, to have a November month. And I think this is an excellent practice, and I am your ambassador in Jubail to really tell the people there that there is this kind of platform to get knowledge, to get enriched with such sort of seminars. And with this, it is my pleasure to present to you Advanced Petrochemical Company. Now, as many of you know, Advanced is a public listed company in the Saudi Stock Exchange market. We were established in 2005. And currently, alhamdulillah, we have grown and we have a share capital of around 2.6 billion Saudi riyals, with a market capitalization hovering around 10 billion Saudi riyals. We continue to grow as part of our Vision 20. We're aligning our strategy with Vision 2030. Our vision is to continue the growth, the story of Advance, and to continue building our strength in the petrochemical business, with relying on that growth, relying on several pillars within the strategy. Responsible care excellence, and there are tremendous stories and awards and accolades that Advanced have received over the past several years that are a testimony of our excellence in responsible care, which is not the platform to share and highlight. Human capital excellence, that are really the strength of our core operational excellence as well as the growth. Operational excellence has been a very important strength for Advanced. In the early decade, in the past decades, Advanced has demonstrated itself as one of the best operators of the PDH plants, which I will come and discuss in short. And that has been the story of our growth in Korea, which we have leveraged that strength to take our knowledge and be a technical partner in our joint venture in Korea. Then also we have the financial strength that will be allowing us to grow with the support from SIDF and the likes. Now, we realize our vision and we realize and we continue to strengthen and solidify our pillars with the culture of excellence that we have at Advance, and we're very proud of. There are various values here, but the continuous improvement, as you can see from the coming slide, becomes more important, how it is embedded in our culture. We have some sort of innovation culture within Advance that really mandates on the employees to have improvement ideas of how they improve their business work, internal as well as external. And there is also a typical slide that we present, but unfortunately I don't have it in this presentation. But that slide shows the operating rate of Advance, how it has grown from 100% to the region to the north of 130%. And that is in every turnaround that we shut our facility, we really work in improving our, implementing all those innovation, those improvement ideas into those times. Now, the story of growth has been outside, but right now our vision is aligning with Vision 2030, and we're maximizing our investments here in the kingdom. And as you can see from the slide, we have established a new affiliate named Advanced Polyolefin Industry Company. Advanced Polyolefin Industry Company is a joint venture with our Korean partner, SK. They have a 15% stake and we have 85%. The story in this joint venture, we want to capitalize on our strength in the PDH and polypropylene business, as well as able to diversify our product portfolio in the polypropylene business and in new chemicals that we are introducing into the kingdom. If you notice there, the PDH and the PP are currently under construction, and thanks to the support of SIDF, who have been an excellent enabler for this project. And the IPA project, we have signed the EPC contract and currently under construction. We're proud that this will be the very first plant in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as across the Middle East. So inshallah, we will be fulfilling all the requirements locally and regionally, and will be able as well to cater for the global demand. Now, just take you, I think Mitra has done an excellent job talking about the market, the growth, the supply and demand. The presentation today here is focused on Advanced more and really sharing with you some of the applications that probably, hopefully, we're just putting it in a simple terms and words. This is a simple schematic of the current advanced that is located in Jubail 1. We take propane as a chemical from Aramco through pipeline from Ras to Nora all the way to Jubail. That's around 60 kilometers through pipeline, shipped to Jubail. We take that propane in a unit named PDH, propane dehydrogenation plant. The core objective of this unit is to take 2 hydrogen atoms from that unit and produce propylene. Propylene, the objective of propylene is to use it as a captive use for the polymerization to make polypropylene. And we utilize LAMAS technology of the PDH plant, which we have demonstrated excellence in operating that unit. And we are proud that the technology licensor uses our facility as a hosting unit for their potential licensees, demonstrating the excellence that we do in running this unit to the best of its performance. The Novolin plant, as you notice, its capacity, the Novolin plant capacity for polypropylene, 450 KTA. However, alhamdulillah, with our operational excellence, as I said earlier, that one of our pillars for growth, as well as the continuous improvement, we have been able to demonstrate growth over that capacities with minimum debottlenecking work, is really leveraging the human capital to implement the ideas. So as you can see from the note, the actual nameplate or licensed capacity is 625 KTA to allow us to produce at such level. So all of that polypropylene goes to the plastic conversion industry, that is locally as well as globally. The story of Advanced continues to grow, and we are in 2025, inshallah, we will be able to produce not only 600 KTA, but we will reach the level of 1.4 million metric tons of polypropylene. And we will be able to diversify and enter into new specialty polypropylene product. The new project that I mentioned in the previous slide, Advanced Polyolefin Industry Company, or what we call APOC, APOC, is similar in schematic, similar in the process flow of the existing unit. However, we are really leveraging the scale of the technology of how much it has reached in order to enjoy economy of scale and in order to be able to compete globally and demonstrate the best technologies implementation. So the PDH plant is 843 KTA. The propylene plant, we are leveraging Lyndall-Basel technologies, and we are entering with this technology into specialty polypropylene product. It's a 2-train. Each train is 400 KTA, so the total is 800 KTA for the polypropylene plant that you see there at Lyndall-Basel. And the same propylene goes into propylene hydrogenation unit. And the objective of this unit to produce the very first IPA plant in the kingdom. And the isopropanol goes to the downstream here locally, as well as for final end users. And the main use for, you're probably very familiar with, is the hand sanitizers. And that has been very important in the past during COVID time. For polypropylene, it will go for the local. We will be able to supply materials that we have not been able to supply in the past. So the plastic conversion industry is wide open. There are a lot of applications in plastics. The objective of this slide is just to share knowledge and share with you the different types of plastics. And then we will zoom into the polypropylene. You probably are, some of you are familiar with the numbering system, but it is important to reiterate the knowledge here. There is, in every plastic, you will see a triangle with a number inside that triangle. That numbering system does not mean how many recycled products or how many times has been recycled. It rather means the type of plastics that has been used. So during the mechanical recycling of the plastics, they are separated according to the numbering system. So PET is most common you see. It is typically in the application of bottled water. High density polyethylene is typically used, and there are various applications, but the picture here only shows one application of that. It's in the caps and closures and used in the caps of the bottle. PVC is a number 3. It's used typically right now on the pipes, construction. And so if you see from those applications, that's why the GDP is important, what Mitra has mentioned. The growth of the GDP matters in terms of the growth of the different applications that we are talking about here. And it's very important to note that all those products, all those plastics, they compete with each other. And the competition comes from the producers. People like Advanced, like SABIC, like LyondellBasell, they all try to make sure that new application like polypropylene enters into application that used to be served by PVC or currently being served by high-density polyethylene. So one of the growth, the story of polypropylene is how it's able to replace polystyrene, for example, or replace other plastics. So that enables it to continue to grow aside from the GDP growth. So there are current applications today, and there are new applications in the future. And those new applications depends on the innovation that comes from the producers. So now I'll just go into several applications of polypropylene so you are able to see how versatile this polypropylene and how important it is for the downstream industry. Our product that comes out of our facility look like this. So it does not look like the final application at all. So we sell resins in 25 kg bags that goes into the local market, typically, and we ship it through trucks, our supply chain for the local market. And hopefully, inshallah, in the future, there will be a train which is already established in Jubail 2, which we will be leveraging as well. This product goes into specific machines implemented by the downstream industry. Some of them have approached you for financing, I am sure. And you put them into their machines, they melt them, and they put them in their final application, either through injection molding, there are different process applications for that. And this picture just tells you how diverse and versatile polypropylene is. And you notice it goes into the automotive industry, and it's one of the key markets as well for polypropylene. And in polypropylene, inside the car and outside the car and under the hood as well, you will see polypropylene in various applications. One of the most demanding applications in terms of material is the bumper of the car. So that's one important application. In food packaging, as mentioned earlier, in consumer goods, in food packaging, all the food packaging for the chips and the different chocolates, they are packaged with polypropylene. For medical gowns by the doctors when they wear, or the baby diapers, or the masks, are all based on polypropylene. For construction industry, now you see how important this piping application has become and predominantly have prevailed in the construction industry. Earlier, it used to be the PVC pipes, if you remember, the gray PVC pipe, the CPVC, what we call it. It looks like gray. Now, this has become the number one for hot water transport or transport within the construction building, the polypropylene random-based application. As well as inside the car, I mentioned there is also the casing for the batteries. You will see for food packaging and for ice cream packaging. The beauty about polypropylene, it provides characteristics and features that allows it to enter into new application and replace as well typical customs and applications. One important market for polypropylene is the fiber industry, which used ultimately as well. One of the applications of the fiber industry is the carpet industry. That's why you notice that some of our polypropylene produced from the kingdom are exported to Turkey. And the reason is this, because we would like to capture the market, the carpet industry, in the Turkey market. So this is one of the main applications. And an important application as well is injection molding, but this picture is limited to one of the applications. Injection molding, there are various types of applications or final end users. This is the crates that are used to transport goods and foods, for example. And this is just also one of the applications. So I hope with these different pictures, it tells you how versatile polypropylene is and how we have been able to really leverage now the new technologies, the new plant, to go, if you look at the right-hand side of this slide here, I'd like to draw the attention that earlier Advanced has been focused on homopolymer, or what we call is their homo, that big circle there. Now, with our new capabilities from the new plant, we will be able to enter into impact copolymer, random copolymer, and thermoplastic polyolefin. Those are new capabilities and sets that we will be enjoying to really serve the local market better. And one thing to note that Advanced has changed its strategy to established, in terms of marketing, established a new marketing company named Advanced Global Marketing Company. And the objective of this is to be able to serve our local customers better with high added value product, as well as to serve the global customers. And you notice with this, in order for us to serve our customer better and really deliver the product that are needed in the market, is we need this type, some sort of new strategy. Alhamdulillah, I have had the pleasure to speak with our marketing company, and they have informed that we are able to replace imports that are currently being served with those specialty products by the import. And we have been working with our local customers to really look at those products and replace them if we are able to serve them with our local product. Now, some stats from the markets. I think Mitra has done an excellent job, but this is from a different source, which more or less matches with what Mitra has mentioned. The global market for polypropylene ranges from, depending on the source that you look at, from 80 to 90 million metric tons, with the Middle East hovering around 5 million metric tons. But the local market, which is the big debate, what is the size of the local market? Today, we rely on the market consultants to tell us, and I know there is excellent efforts done by the different ministries to estimate exactly what's the local market to be able to serve them better. Today, the expected is around 700,000 metric tons, with our production of around, total production in the kingdom, around 5 million tons of polypropylene. So that is why, as mentioned by Mitra, we are currently exporting a lot of these quantities outside of the kingdom. And there is an excellent focus right now to really be able to better serve the local markets and really enrich the downstream industry to ensure continuous supply and high added value product for the local market. So you've seen the resins that I have shared in the previous slides. Those products, they are bagged in similar, what you see here, those are the bagging that how we ship them and packaging. And we are coloring them depending on the, I'd say, category of the product. There is a homopolymer, there is a random, and there is impact. And there is small differences between them. I mean, just for your, there is only the ethylene content that differentiates between the different products. Our growth has been with very, it's my pleasure to thank SIDF and the enabler for our growth since the beginning of Advance in 2005. We have been, alhamdulillah, able to obtain the 400 million Saudi riyals that allow us to move into flotation and establish our existing company. But what is more impressive is our recent experience with SIDF. We have been able to obtain in 2022 a loan worth of 3 billion Saudi riyals. And alhamdulillah, this not only the amount of it, it's also the experience that we have experienced with SIDF in order to obtain the loan. It's unprecedented time to get the loan. The loan application, the online application has been impressive. The facilitation that has been done by the team of the credit, I am really impressed, and the evaluation that has been done. It has been a concern before we started the application process, but the SIDF has exceeded our expectation, and we have been an advocate for SIDF in all of our projects right now to, when we move into a new joint venture company, SIDF is the way to go for our financing. Definitely it is subject to evaluation and convincing as well. And if you look at this picture, and that is something, this is a product of how you enabled us. This picture taken from my camera just last Thursday. I took a picture for our new facility that with your 3 billion we have been able to establish. If you see that big tank over there, that is the propylene tank After the PDH plant, we ship that propylene to that tank, and then we fit it into the subsequent, if you see certain columns there, those are the polypropylene units. So with this, I really thank you so much for your support to enable Advanced to grow, and we continue to have SIDF beside us to realize our Vision 2030 and vision of Advanced to align it with Vision 2030. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Faris, for sharing your valuable knowledge. Now we will move on to Mr. Samir Al-Jishi, sharing his insights about Sipchem polypropylene business. Please join us.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be with you here in SIDF. As introduced, I started my career in SIDF, so it's good to be back here. And thanks for the invitation to be coming part of November. This is an excellent initiative, and we encourage happening this quite often. What I will give is a continuing story of what we heard from Advanced and CMA about the market, and Advanced another success story for the polypropylene in Saudi Arabia. We will talk about Al-Waha Petrochemical Company. Al-Waha is a joint venture company between Sipchem, which is Sahara International Petrochemical Company, and LyondellBasell, that was established back in 2006 and became operational around 2011. And since then it was operation successful until we reached to the end of this year, where we are expanding the facility for debottlenecking by almost 30%. This success story has gone through SIDF support, which at that time was very excellent thing for Sipchem to have. At that time it was under Sahara, and that support made it very well for Al-Waha to progress until this time. Engagement with this IDF is not only finance, it goes through several aspects as of course it's known, but it needs really to be emphasized that the technical support from the due diligence on the technology, on the CAPEX, the market due diligence on the market situation, the credit studies, the partnering with LyondellBasell at that time, the attractiveness of the facilities to the partner, all of this made that happen, and that we see that it is continuing, and not only that, it is playing a major role in attracting more businesses in Saudi Arabia. This situation is not happening only with Al-Waha. Sipchem has a lot of affiliated companies, and it happens almost in every single them. And we use SIDF to really attract the investors to come to Saudi Arabia to invest, having this excellent facility. Al-Waha is part of the polypropylene system in Saudi Arabia. We have a polypropylene of capacity of 500,000 tons with the technology from LyondellBasell, BDH plant from Uday. We are, as you know, the market size in Saudi Arabia is not that big, so the majority of our product is exported to foreign countries. We created jobs of around 300 or more, and LyondellBasell is committed with us since the inception, even with the expansion, so there is a foreign direct investment is being brought to Saudi Arabia. This is the success of what SIDF has done to Al-Waha, and we, alhamdulillah, we have excellent technical plant. Capacity utilization is over 100% in overall the years. The return on investment over the journey of this plant is exceeding 10 or 11%. Amount of total product cumulative is exceeding 2 billion riyal, when this is unprecedented in this organization. And this is encouraging the foreign partner, Lyondell Basel, to keep investing in Saudi Arabia. You heard about the new investment of Lyondell Basel with other companies, and also they are putting a confidence to go further for the debottlenecking of Al-Waha plant. In continuing the story of the market, I thought I will present the spread of the propane and the polypropylene. Historically, if we focus on the red line, this is the spread between the propane and the polypropylene. Producing through BDH is very important factor to realize that in the past the spread was stable until the beginning of 2022, where we have the spreads started to go down. And as this is supporting your story that we will see a bottom of the cycle in this time, and hopefully the curve will start to go up in a year or two, where we will start to enjoy more the business or the competitive of the business. This indicates the importance of what Ministry of Energy is doing of having a discount feedstock. It is necessary to continue this strategy in Saudi Arabia, because you want to keep the competitive edge of the polypropylene production in Saudi Arabia, having very tight margin in the polypropylene industry, and we expect this to stay. Last year there was an increase in methane and ethane and methane, but nothing was touched in the propane, and inshallah we hope that this will continue. Where we go from there, this is the strategy of Sipchem, but it is also projected to Al-Waha. We focus on growth, and as we are speaking, we started the expansion of Al-Waha plant. We signed the contract 2 months ago, and inshallah the expansion will be finished in 2 years. This goes to all other products Sipchem, where we have opportunity for expansion or building a new plant. We will not hesitate to do that. Profitability is a key for our industry. We are growing, but we need to grow healthy. We will not grow for things that it is not competitive, or things that is not bringing a margin. Being a public company, we are responsible to make sure that our stakeholders are in a safe investment. Sustainability, it goes without say, is the subject of all the industry worldwide. We realize that, and we have now implemented sustainability program in the company, from establishing the department, going through ESG KPIs, and focus on that, especially from the finance now. They are focusing on ESG financing. So it is very important aspect when you go to finance, that we are applying the ESG principles. The enablers for this is without say is the people. We invest a lot in our people. These are our assets. Without the people, we will not realize any improvement, any competitive in Sipchem. And we started, and this is new in Sipchem, digital and innovation. Digitalization is a major program in Sipchem. After approving this strategy 2 years ago, we changed the platform of Sipchem recently, implementing S4HANA. And now we are ready to implement the digitalization of Sipchem. We expect in 2025 to realize a huge improvement in our processes due to digitalization, which will impact the bottom line. Innovation is something also that we are support through our R&D center in Dhahran. Also, we established the Sipchem Innovent in Europe, which invest in technology and sustainable technologies. With this strategy, we believe in Sipchem will go to hopefully being or maintain the competitiveness, if not improving it, and also be part of the 2030 vision of Saudi Arabia, inshallah. And with that, I thank you very much, and we'll be happy to have any question, inshallah.
Thank you, Mr. Samir, for sharing your valuable knowledge. Now, I thank all the esteemed speakers for sharing their valuable insight in the polypropylene market. Now, we're going to start the Q&A section.